Welcome back to our countdown of the top 10 differences between Americans and Canadians, as we examine how these neighboring countries view each other's traits. America and Canada, two neighbors, one border, and an unspoken agreement to tolerate each other's quirks. To many Americans, Canada is America's polite hat, while Canadians look at America with equal parts fascination and exasperation. It's like watching your boisterous, overachieving sibling make loud, bold life choices while you quietly sip your Tim Hortons and shovel your driveway. While the two countries share much, a common language, a love for hockey, whether they admit it or not, and an alarming number of Tim Hortons locations in New York State, they are worlds apart in many ways. Some of these differences are practical, others cultural, and a few are just plain hilarious. Let's take a closer look at what truly sets these two nations apart in the top 10 differences between Americans and Canadians. Number 10. Communication. Canadians apologize. Americans advertise. The defining trait of a Canadian is their ability to apologize for things they didn't do. It's like a superpower. Did someone else step on your foot? Sorry. Did the cashier mess up your order? Oh, I'm sorry, I must not have ordered clearly. Did it start raining unexpectedly? Sorry about the weather. Canadians treat sorry as a reflex, a punctuation mark, and sometimes even a replacement for hello. Americans, on the other hand, communicate with a confidence that borders on theatrical. When an American walks into a room, they're not there to apologize. They're there to tell you about their weekend, their side hustle, and their upcoming podcast. Direct, assertive, and often blunt, Americans view apologies as an admission of guilt, not as a conversational lubricant. Saying sorry is rare and typically reserved for serious offenses like accidentally unfollowing someone on Instagram. But it doesn't stop there. On social media, Canadians are known for using words like beautiful, favorite, and great, while Americans lean heavily on terms like annoying, hate, and tired. One Twitter study even found that Canadians swear less, which means their tweets are either wholesome or boring, depending on your perspective. Number 9. Food, bagged milk and poutine versus fried everything. If you're eating in Canada, chances are there's maple syrup involved. It's their secret sauce, and yes, they probably have a bottle of the good stuff in their fridge. None of that pancake syrup nonsense. But perhaps the most baffling culinary oddity for Americans visiting Canada is milk in bags. That's right. In parts of Canada, you don't just buy a carton of milk, you buy a bag. It's like a Capri Sun, but less fun. Then there's poutine, Canada's greatest contribution to global cuisine. French fries topped with cheese curds and smothered in gravy. It's a meal, a snack, and a cry for help all at once. Americans, meanwhile, would take those fries, deep fry them again, coat them in cheese powder, and serve them with ranch dressing. It's a subtle but significant difference. Fast food culture is another shared love, but Canadians are fiercely loyal to Tim Hortons. While Americans have Starbucks on every corner, Canadians have Timmy's, where you can grab a double-double, coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars, and a donut. Tim Hortons has even infiltrated a few states, though Americans don't quite get the hype. Canadians, however, will fight you over the honor of their favorite chain. Number 8. Houses. Cozy cabins versus McMansions. Canadians love their homes practical and snug, often with basements to store hockey gear, winter coats, and maybe a family of raccoons. American homes, by contrast, often go big, sometimes absurdly big. Why settle for 1 living room when you can have 3? Why have a backyard when you can have a yard big enough for a fireworks display? Canadian houses also reflect their weather. In the snowy provinces, brick homes and heated floors are common because frostbite isn't fun. Americans in the southern states, however, opt for lighter, cheaper materials because their biggest enemy isn't snow, it's humidity and hurricanes. One key cultural difference? Canadians take off their shoes indoors. It's not just a rule, it's a moral code. Americans, meanwhile, sometimes walk around their homes in sneakers, which horrifies Canadians. If you really want to confuse a Canadian, visit their house and casually stroll across their carpet in outdoor boots. The horror on their face will be unmatched. Number 7. Language, 2 dialects, 1 big misunderstanding. At first glance, Americans and Canadians speak the same language, until you ask where the washroom is and get blank stares from your American friends. Canadians say washroom instead of bathroom because presumably they're not bathing in public. Americans, meanwhile, prefer terms like restroom or just bathroom, even if there's no tub in sight. Then there's spelling. Canadians, bless their hearts, hold on to British spelling like it's a family heirloom. They write color instead of color, center instead of center, and favorite instead of favorite. Americans dropped those extra letters centuries ago because apparently less is more. And let's not forget accents. Americans accuse Canadians of saying aboot instead of about, but Canadians insist it's more of an aboat. It's a linguistic tug of war that neither side is willing to concede. Number 6. Sports. Hockey is life in Canada. In Canada, hockey isn't just a sport, it's a national obsession. Every small town has an ice rink, and every family has a kid who dreams of making it to the NHL. Canadians are so serious about hockey that their 7 NHL teams have cult followings. Lose to an American team? Time to riot, politely of course. Meanwhile, Americans dominate the world of sports in everything except hockey. Football, basketball, and baseball reign supreme south of the border. And while Canadians will grudgingly admit that American football is entertaining, they'll also remind you that a Canadian invented basketball. Every single time. Number 5. Religion, God Bless America versus the Great Secular North. America's relationship with religion is serious and deeply ingrained in its culture. Over half of Americans identify as Protestant Christians, and phrases like "In God We Trust" appear on their money. In Canada, religion is more of an optional extra, like guac at Chipotle. Only 27% of Canadians consider religion important in their lives, making it one of the least religious countries in the world. Canada's diversity extends to religion as well. While Catholicism was historically dominant, the rise of Islam, Hinduism, and Sikhism reflects the country's multiculturalism. Americans, by contrast, tend to have fewer religious minorities, though this is slowly changing. Number 4. Immigration mosaic versus melting pot. America loves its melting pot metaphor, where all cultures blend into one big American stew. Canada, on the other hand, prefers the mosaic, where everyone keeps their individual colors and traditions. It's the difference between assimilation and celebration. Canada's higher immigration rates mean that nearly 20% of its population was born abroad, compared to just 13% in the U.S. This diversity is reflected in Canadian cities like Toronto, where over half the population belongs to a visible minority. Americans may pride themselves on diversity, but Canada quietly outpaces them in cultural inclusivity. Number 3. Liberal values, progressive North versus divided states. Politically, Canada leans left. Universal healthcare? Check. Legalized marijuana? Check. Same-sex marriage? They've had it since 2005. America's political landscape, by contrast, feels like a never-ending reality show, with heated debates over everything from healthcare to gun rights. Canadians aren't perfect. There's still a conservative streak in certain provinces, but they tend to be less polarized. America, on the other hand, thrives on polarization. Canadians might argue about hockey teams, but Americans will argue about everything else. Number 2. Work ethic, the 40-hour work week versus hustle culture. Americans work hard, and they want everyone to know it. The U.S. glorifies the hustle, with many employees working 50-hour weeks and skipping vacations to prove their worth. Canadians, meanwhile, value work-life balance. They're legally entitled to vacation time, and they're not afraid to use it. Business meetings also reflect this cultural divide. Americans dive straight into the agenda, while Canadians prefer a bit of small talk. Relationships matter up north, and you're expected to build rapport before negotiating deals. Number 1. The niceness factor, who wins the politeness Olympics? Let's face it, Canadians have a reputation for being the nicest people on earth. Whether it's saying sorry too often, holding doors open for strangers, or letting you merge in traffic, they've mastered the art of politeness. Americans, while friendly, are less likely to apologize unless absolutely necessary. And even then, it might come with a side of sarcasm. Canadians might seem overly diplomatic to Americans, while Americans can come across as brash to Canadians. At the end of the day, though, both nations have their own brand of charm. While America and Canada share a continent, they march to the beat of very different drums, or in Canada's case, politely tap on them. From hockey to holidays, communication styles to cuisine, these two nations prove that even neighbors can have wildly different personalities. So whether you're grabbing a bagged milk in Toronto or a cheeseburger in Texas, remember to embrace the quirks that make these countries uniquely entertaining. After all, a little humor goes a long way, eh? Thank you for joining us for this fascinating exploration of the top 10 differences between Americans and Canadians. We look forward to unraveling more insights and mysteries with you in the future. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can stay informed about our upcoming deep dives into history, science, and the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you have anything to add to the list? With all their differences, can Canada be the 51st state of the United States? If you found the traits of Americans versus Canadians interesting and thought-provoking, share them with others and join us in uncovering the stories of both the past and the future together.